All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, it's so funny. This entire Anthony Davis trying to force a trade to the Los Angeles Lakers storyline has been something that pretty much has been bubbling under the surface for the past 5 months or so. Over the course of last season, the story was, will Anthony Davis end up being a Boston Celtic? Now it's starting to become more of an LA Lakers storyline, and we knew that that was going to be the case once he decided that he was going to join Clutch Sports. Well, Anthony Davis has felt compelled, or he now feels compelled, to go public with his so-called allegiance or loyalty to the city of New Orleans and the franchise of the Pelicans. How sincere he is, we really don't know, because so many of these players are taught to lie in order to maintain, their quote-unquote good standing with their current franchise. Now, Anthony Davis's team is due to play the LA Lakers this Friday, and supposedly he's going to be meeting up with LeBron James and maybe even certain other Laker notables for dinner. Who knows how true that is? Either way, I do believe that the Lakers are going to try to make a major play for Anthony Davis before the trading deadline. And if that falls through, certainly in the offseason, particularly if they're not able to get either Kawhi Leonard or Kevin Durant. So, of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
Jalen sending everybody to voicemail. All right, guys, according to multiple reports, the Lakers want Anthony Davis, and same with the Boston Celtics. Great problems to have. But the question is, Stephen A., where should AD want to go?
He should want to go to L.A., to be honest with you.
No, you think that he should want to go to L.A. because that will give you more reason to be out in L.A. and frequent them big booty strip clubs you like to go to, allegedly.
Because if LeBron James is the greatest player in the world, and you pair him with somebody that Max Kellerman and myself both believe could very well end up being the greatest player in the world by next season, the reality is that you put that tandem together in the sport of basketball, that could definitely mean championships, not to mention.
That's entirely speculation. I mean, no disrespect to LeBron James, but LeBron has yet to prove that he's been able to make another great player actually better within the LeBron James system, especially a big man like Anthony Davis. I could see Anthony Davis possibly becoming marginalized to the level where he might just be a slightly better version of Chris Bosh in the LeBron James system. Who knows? We know that as of right now, Anthony Davis is an analytics monster. He leads in most of the high-level analytics, including he's always like in the top 3 of PER, effect that he has on his team winning, point differential, things of that nature. The real question is whether or not he's an alpha. In this current NBA right now, it's very difficult for your best player to be a center and your team be a serious contender for an NBA championship. These are not the days of Akeem Olajuwon and Patrick Ewing and Shaquille O'Neal, where your best player could be a center and you can go to the finals with a center as your best player. Right now in today's NBA, your best player has to be a wing. And even if your center is someone on the talent level of an Anthony Davis or Joel Embiid, those players cannot be considered any higher than your second best player, and certainly not your best player.
Mention the fact that, when you look at the Eastern Conference and what have you, if Anthony Davis were to go to Boston, obviously there's Toronto to deal with this year. You don't know what's going to happen with Kawhi Leonard. Out west, Kevin Durant and the Golden State Warriors may stay together or whatever, or they may join forces with Kawhi Leonard as well. So you take all of those things into consideration. I just think Tinseltown being L.A., Anthony Davis, what he brings to the table, the fact that LeBron is supposed to be that dude, that guy, the greatest player in the world at this particular moment in time, and what
allegedly
what it will require to get Anthony Davis to Boston. Because listen, Boston has talked about Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown both being gone, but you'd also have to include Kyrie Irving because of the Rose Rule. For those that don't know what it is, look it up. It's a complicated thing that involves basically Kyrie Irving would have to be moved in order for the Boston Celtics to acquire Anthony Davis. So you take all of those things into consideration.
If you're the Celtics, why would you want to do that? If you were to trade Kyrie Irving for Anthony Davis, I mean, come on. That's pretty much cutting off your nose to spite your face. If I'm the Boston Celtics right now, I try to re-up Kyrie in the offseason and hope that Anthony Davis is still around. But I'm not going to move everybody, including Kyrie, for Anthony Davis. No way.
I would say, no, L.A. is the place for him to go.
Place for him to go, I hate to say it, because L.A. ultimately is the place for him to go. But right now, the place is Boston.
I agree, sir. But Boston is going to have to wait and hope.
Boston, first of all, has the best chance to actually acquire him because they have the most valuable stuff to trade. Boston is also, I've taken the Raptors to get to the finals. If Boston, and what Stephen A. was, you were describing the Rose Rule, you're talking about teams can designate a player. You cannot trade for two designated players. Kyrie is a designated player, and so is Anthony Davis. So the only way to acquire Anthony Davis is if you trade Kyrie for him. Therefore, you only have one of another team's designated players. And so, but even think about that. Think about subtracting Kyrie, adding AD. And it would have to be more than just Kyrie, I understand, but basically that. You're subtracting a guy. Kyrie's an excellent player. I do the star system, 1 through 5 stars. 5 stars MVP, 4 is an all-star, 3 is a starter, 2 is a rotation piece, and 1 is like a replacement level player. Kyrie's a 4.5-star player.
I agree with that.
He's not an MVP, but he's more than just an all-star. AD is a 5-star player. He's a perennial, game-for-game, MVP caliber player.
I will put AD, and I've stated this already in regards to Max Kellerman's his rating system. I will give AD about a 4.7, 4.8. Yes, he's an unbelievable stat monster, but he is yet to prove that his style of play is going to reflect in his team being a contender to win a world championship. So I cannot put him at 5-star. When I think of 5-star players, I think of Steph Curry, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and also Kawhi Leonard somewhere in there as well. But when we're talking about, 4.7, maybe 4.8, that's AD, Giannis. I might even have to put James Harden ahead of either one of those players when it comes to Max Kellerman's rating system and his ability to, number one, win an MVP and take his team deep into the playoffs in the style of basketball that is currently played in the NBA. Now, would I take James Harden over Anthony Davis or Giannis? Not quite sure, because I think that both Giannis and Anthony Davis are overall better players. But in this current NBA, a player like a James Harden is extremely invaluable.
And
at least in the regular season. But let the record show, James Harden has led his teams to deeper playoff runs than either Anthony Davis or Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Let's also remember when Kyrie wasn't playing for the Celtics last year, they were moving the ball better. And, you had more players who could kind of play with the ball because it wasn't sticking to one guy, like as it does with Kyrie. And they made the conference finals. Made a run. Now you're taking from that team Kyrie out. Remember, he wasn't on the team that made the playoff run.
Yeah.
And you're replacing him with Anthony Davis. I'm here to tell you, if the Celtics acquired Anthony Davis, they are getting to the finals this year. He's not a free agent next year.
Right, but you're not going to trade Anthony Davis for Kyrie Irving straight up if you're the New Orleans Pelicans. It's going to be Kyrie. It's going to be Jason Tatum. It's going to be Jaylen Brown. It might even be a first-round draft pick. Who knows? Is that actually what you want to do if you're Danny Ainge? It would not be what I want to do. I'd be willing to wait until the offseason.
I'm telling you, next year they're winning the whole thing. So, and then Anthony Davis can sign wherever he wants, including the Lakers. Where should he want to play right now? It pains me to say it. It's like poison in my mouth. But the answer is Boston.
I'm not sold on it. First of all, you'd have to get rid of Kyrie Irving because you got to remember Kyrie Irving is approaching free agency. It's not just about the rules. Don't get me wrong. That prevents the trade from happening, because you got to swap those two players. So it leads towards it happening during the summertime as opposed to this season. But just talking strictly basketball here, I'm also of the mindset that if you're the Pelicans, you got to make sure somebody like Kyrie Irving will want to stay on board.
Ding.
And I know he wouldn't want to stay in New Orleans. So you got that going on. Number 2, the Western Conference is up for grabs outside of Golden State, obviously. You look at Golden...
Right, but what does that really mean, Stephen A. Smith? The Western Conference is up for grabs outside of Golden State. So then you're saying that it's not up for grabs.
Golden State, yeah, they are who they are. But we've seen some vulnerabilities. We saw them a bit vulnerable against Houston.
What we've seen Steph Curry miss about 10 games. Golden State has 11 losses. Had Steph Curry not missed those games, they probably only have about 4 or 5 losses. That's what we've seen thus far, Stephen A. Smith. Now, I will say this, Golden State is not playing as well as they played in years past. But when Steph missed that big gap of games, that big hunk of games, and then Mama's boy Draymond Green detonated on Mama's boy Kevin Durant, that started the downward tumble. And it's going to be very difficult for them to come out of that downward tumble. Because at the end of the day, the other teams in the Western Conference have caught up to Golden State a bit. They're not on Golden State's level, but for the sake of the regular season, Golden State will lose games in Denver, in Utah, in Portland, places like that where these teams are trying to mimic the Golden State style of offense, and they have players who can detonate, who can explode on a certain night. On any given night, you can have somebody like a DeMar DeRozan score 40 or 45 points and Golden State lose in San Antonio. You can have a Damian Lillard go for 51 points and they lose in Portland. It's happened before. So that's going to happen. But the biggest problem with Golden State right now is that their bench is not as good or as impactful as it has been in years past. And right now it's really starting to show. There's a glaring lack of potency in the big man spot, the 4 and the 5 spot, who they have backing up Draymond. And no disrespect, even Draymond himself. Draymond Green has not hit a long-range jump shot in about 2 years.
In the conference finals, as you pointed out, Max, even though they ended up winning that series like I thought they would, primarily in part in some people's eyes because Chris Paul went down. But my point is we've seen some vulnerabilities. We see what happened with Draymond Green and Kevin Durant. Even though they've been winning games in the same breath, they haven't looked the same. And this is with Steph Curry having an MVP caliber season despite the games that he has missed. We look around the rest of the conference, it appears incredibly vulnerable. We look at the East, we see Toronto. They are here. We see Milwaukee and Philly. They are coming. We wonder about Boston because they haven't really kicked it into gear yet, even though I believe they will. And we know what a stud is.
Well, we think that they will. But once again, in the NBA right now, the NBA has more overall talent from top to bottom than it's ever had in its history. There's no doubt about that. So are there going to be any teams in the league right now that win 60 games? I doubt it. When we look at the best records in the NBA, we have the Denver Nuggets, who are 21-9. I think that the Toronto Raptors are around 23 or 24-9. They already have 9 losses. They're both going to have to lose no more than 13 games for the rest of the season to win 60 games. And I just don't see that from either Toronto or Denver. As a matter of fact, I could see Golden State going on a streak where they win 35 of their next 40 before I could see Denver or Toronto winning 60 games. So if I had to bet right now, I would say that there are not going to be any 60-game winners in the league right now. So there's a lot of parity in the NBA.
Anthony Davis is. I'm just saying that anything that you could say about Boston, I could say about LA with LeBron and Anthony Davis on the same roster this year.
I'm not quite sure if I would co-sign that, brother, because we still don't know how well LeBron James is going to be able to implement Anthony Davis into the LeBron James system before this year is out. But I would say this: if the Lakers were to pull the trigger on an Anthony Davis trade before the trading deadline this season, all of a sudden the pressure would ratchet up on Mr. LeBron James to compete for a championship, and I'm not quite sure if he wants that this season.
Would you rather play for Ainge and Stevens, or would you rather be with Magic and Walton?
It's hard to take anyone over Ainge and Stevens. I like Magic and Walton a lot.
You'd have to take Ainge and Stevens if you're Anthony Davis, because if you go to LA, it's not about Magic and Walton, it's about LeBron. It's what does LeBron want.
And it's also hard to take Boston over LA just as a place to live if you have chances to win in both places.
It depends on your personality. Not everybody wants to head out to LA, to Freakville, to Witchcraft Town. Some people might prefer Boston. I think that Kyrie might prefer Boston. A lot of snow bunnies out there for him to play with. Anthony Davis might like Boston. If he's low-key, who knows? Supposedly, Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving have a very close brotherly relationship. So things might go in a way that people don't necessarily expect.
Everyone in the world, including everyone in Boston, would rather live in LA, whether they admit it or not. It's not LA's fault that it's warm there, and the Pacific Ocean is right there and all that stuff, and Hollywood and all this kind of stuff.
Once again, everybody does not care for Hollywood, dude.
But Stephen A., I hear what you say. When you have 2 MVPs on the same team, you can build around that very quickly. But what I'm saying is, Boston, like, how does AD even get to LA? You have to, even if they could trade for him, they'd have to empty the cupboards. They'd have to empty the cupboards. Boston,
just a matter of
Boston could acquire AD. Yeah, but Boston could acquire AD and still have multiple All-Stars on the team. You know, like.
Are you sure about that, sir? Once again, they have to trade Kyrie to get AD. I would suspect that they would also have to trade Al Horford to get AD. And at the very least, they would have to trade one of those young wings, either Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum, and may even have to throw in Gordon Hayward as well. maybe a first-round draft pick, and they'd probably get back AD and maybe Drew Holiday.
So, like, Boston they have more to acquire him while keeping more. And so over the next year and a half, which is all that he has left on his current deal, he could win a championship in Boston next year and still sign in LA after that.
But it's no debate or even a discussion as it pertains to who has the most assets. Clearly, Boston has more assets. It seems virtually impossible for the Lakers to be able to put together a deal straight up that would allow the Pelicans to entertain a trade. Because you got to remember, it's not like Anthony Davis is approaching the last year of his deal. He is signed through this season and next season. So it's more likely that if he were to be moved, it would be this summer. It wouldn't be during this season. I can tell you that Rich Paul would love for Anthony Davis to be moved now as opposed to next season or whatever the case may be. But the bottom line is that it seems unlikely. I'm just saying that if you're Anthony Davis, I think it's a more preferable spot to be in LA.
Guys, one other thing I want to...
Right, but you've yet to prove why. You haven't stated anything concrete to show this is why Anthony Davis should prefer LA other than LeBron James. And LeBron James, once again, is 3-6 in the finals. And out of the 3 championships that he's won, 2 of them he probably should not have won. I mean, not to go there. At the end of the day, I'm sure that many of his fanboys are going to get upset by that. But he won 1 championship because Draymond Green tried to chop him in the nuts. He won another championship because Ray Allen hit one of the biggest shots in the history of the NBA. I mean, it's not like LeBron James goes to the finals and he's winning in 5 or 6 games. For the most part, when he goes to the finals, he wins by the hairs of his chin. So this notion that LeBron James is the barometer for winning or excellence in the league, individual regular season excellence, and also understanding how to ratchet it up in the postseason until he faces a team with a high overall basketball IQ, yeah, that's LeBron. But what really is he going to teach Anthony Davis? Because the only thing that he can use Anthony Davis for is as a pawn and a prop to try to assist him in getting a 4th championship. He's not interested in trying to train up Anthony Davis. It would be much more to the advantage of Anthony Davis to go to the Boston Celtics and learn how to play in a real system under a real coach. But anyway, that's basically it on that. I do suspect that the Lakers will try to make a major trade for him before the All-Star break to try to beat Boston to it, because I think that even they understand that the Boston Celtics, they just have a lot more in their coffers. Remember, they also have a whole bunch of first-round draft picks. And if you're the Pelicans, you would think that if they're going to rebuild and let go of Anthony Davis, they're going to want at least 1 first-round draft pick back. So peace.